Hey, it's May, welcome to another video. So today we're going to talk about art fight. It's only been my second year doing art fight, but I've been having so much fun with it, and I think lots more artists should try it too. This isn't going to be a tutorial or like an in-depth history of art fight and all the details surrounding how it works. There's plenty of other videos that go more in depth about that, and I don't want to repeat what you may already know. So I'll link a few videos that I found are helpful if you need more info about it on that end, but I'm just going to basically go into what is art fight, some reasons to do it, and some tips to have a more enjoyable battle. And in the background, I will actually be working on an attack. So, first, briefly, what is art fight? Art fight is a yearly event where artists with original characters can choose between one of two teams of a certain theme. It kind of reminds me of Pokemon versions, like some past themes were Sugar vs. Spice, Dream vs. Nightmares, last year was Bloom vs. Wither, and this year it's Vampires vs. Werewolves. So anyway, you pick which team you want to be on, and then the primary goal is to accumulate the most points for your team. To attack someone, you just make art of their character. And that could be a drawing, an animation, a 3D render, or even like a craft, like a clay figure, or even a traditional drawing, or like a sketch. You can attack anyone, even if they're on the same team as you. You'll just earn like less points if they're on the same team, and that's called friendly fire. And you can also do mass attacks, which is basically drawing more than one, I think it's up to 100 if I'm not mistaken, more than one character in the same piece. Those are really exciting. People get really creative with it, and it's really inspiring to see what kinds of things people come up with. So let's get into some reasons to do art fight. Number one, it is so pure at its core. It's just everyone drawing each other's characters, and sure, it's for points in a competition, but it's not like there's any concrete reward or monetary prize or anything if that team wins. It's literally just everyone drawing each other's beloved original characters and surprising one another and making people's day, and just everyone is happy, and it's wonderful. And that's my favorite thing about art fight as a whole. I just can't get over how pure it is at its core, in my opinion. Number two, it kind of goes along with the last one, but you will make somebody's day. And if you are an artist with your own characters, you might know how it feels when someone draws that character, whether you're expecting it or it's out of the blue. It's just really, really special. Just because our characters are usually pretty precious to us, and to see somebody else draw it, it's very much like, it's very special. Especially if it's an artist you admire or something. It's like, wow, oh my goodness. It feels like you were handed like a valuable treasure. It's indescribable. It's great. It's just great. That's the second reason. Reason number three is that it's a great opportunity to get to practice different styles or drawing different types of characters and then improve in your art skills. And what better way to free two birds with one key, or mash two potatoes with one fork? Your art skills will improve, and you have the privilege of making somebody's day. Sign me up. Again, so pure. Reason number four, it's actually a great way to discover new artists. That happened to me last year. I have Art Fight to thank for even knowing about some really cool artists I followed today, and I've been finding more this year too. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to even discover more artists that you might really like. Reason number five, it's only once a year. There's something about limited time special events that make them so special. Like, this is your opportunity to do it now, or you gotta wait another 12 months. So what are you waiting for? And reason number six, you just might get something in return out of it. Now, you never want to go into it with that mindset, of course, but you might be pleasantly surprised. Who knows? You might get more attacks out of the blue than you're expecting, or someone you attack just might revenge you. Again, who knows? But if you don't try at all, the chances are always zero. So, we talked about a few reasons to even participate in art fight, but now let's go over a few tips that might be helpful to make sure that your experience is the best it can possibly be. So, tip number one, make sure your references are all uploaded well before the competition starts. So every year, the art fight site sort of has this tendency to just literally go down at the very beginning and very end of the month, just with the amount of activity going on. It's a lot for the servers to handle. So you can mitigate that by making sure all your characters and their references are uploaded and all set way earlier, like in June or even May. but you cannot start any attacks early. So don't be drawing any characters early before the competition starts. They have a big rule against that, and that can get you banned. So that's something you can wait for when the competition starts to start doing. In fact, you can use the time while the site is down to just focus on your attacks, so there's that. And the next tip sort of goes along with the first one, and it is to create an off-site quote-unquote hit list of characters' IDs and picture references and the owner's usernames. It's just useful for when the site is down or if it's being very slow, that you can refer to that list while you're making your attacks and you don't have to worry about the site being down. That's something I actually don't personally do. I mean, I will write down a list of characters that I intend to go after just for my own personal reference, but it's just something I've seen other people do, so I figured I would include it in there in case it would be helpful to someone. The third tip I have is to include as much information as possible about your original character so that it might give people ideas on how to draw them or will motivate them to draw them, including fun things like relationships with other characters, a little bit about the story that they come from and lore from that story, but it also at the same time doesn't have to be like paragraphs of info dumping. More often than not, just a simple blurb of information will suffice. If you even have anything at all, it's not like required, it's just a bonus to get people inspired to draw that character. I don't think I even have anything on most of my characters' Artfight profiles, so I need to kind of get on that, but I do have some of their Toy House profiles linked, so that can be helpful too. Tip number 4 I think was also briefly mentioned before. You should never go into it expecting just what you can get out of it. Instead, you should view it as an opportunity to give to others. There's nothing wrong with wanting art out of the event, because that is part of the event, is for everyone to get art of their characters. But if you go into it primarily with this mindset, honestly, you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment, and it's sort of missing the main point of the event anyway, so just something to keep in mind. Tip number 5, you shouldn't feel pressured to give all of your time to it or to make every piece that you do as polished as possible. Just do what you can, because at the end of the day, it's just supposed to be fun, and if you're stressing out about it, then, that's no good. You just gotta, do what you can and don't put too much pressure on yourself. That kind of makes me think of the concept of revenge or revenge chains. So a revenge is basically attacking someone back who attacked you, and a revenge chain is 2 people attacking each other back and forth, and those can be fun. That can be a lot of pressure for some people to, you can get an attack and then you can feel obliged to attack back, but there's no obligation or compulsion to revenge every single person. So most people should be pretty understanding about that. But, it's just something to keep in mind. Also, when you're attacking people too, you shouldn't pressure them to attack you back, because that's no good. And we're all busy and, we all got stuff going on. And again, at the end of the day, it's just a fun little event. So, let's keep it that way. Number 6. This is a good art tip in general, but you should never compare yourself to what others can do. And in this context, that means the quantity of attacks or the quality of people's attacks. Again, it's supposed to be fun, and comparison is just something you should never do as an artist anyway. If you're participating in this event, you should just do your best, focus on what you can do, and focus on just being better than the you from yesterday or last year. But even if you can't do that, like if you can only do fewer attacks than you maybe did last year, then even that, you should just celebrate what you can do, because despite everything, you did it. And with the quality of attacks too, some people, they go above and beyond and polish like every piece that they do, and that's awesome, that's really cool, but you shouldn't let that pressure you if, your circumstances aren't exactly the same as theirs. You shouldn't feel that pressure yourself if, if that's something that would stress you out or cause you to not enjoy the competition as much. So we want to avoid that. So don't compare yourself. Everybody's art is good art, and what you can do is awesome. And the last tip I have here, tip number 7, it is totally okay to jump in the middle of the month. In fact, I encourage it. You watching right now, I implore you to join the battle, because you just might really enjoy it. Oh boy, so that's all the tips I could come up with, and we still have a lot of time left. I don't know what to do. Okay, so I hope I made it sound fun, like something you might want to consider trying. And if you're already in the battle, which team did you pick this year? Also, feel free to drop your username in the comments. Not the full hyperlink to your profile, but just the username, because the link might get the comment accidentally hidden. And that's another thing about art fight is you need the link to a person's profile in order to find it, or the link to a character, because there is no search function. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't know. I feel like we're all kind of used to it at this point. So if you want to visit a person's profile who shared their username in the comments, you can just attach it to the end of the URL like this that's displayed on screen right now. But you will already need to have an account in order to view someone's profile, so keep that in mind as well. That's another thing I just thought of. So there's no obligation or pressure to participate even in the event. So every year, a few days before the competition starts, so at the end of June, they have the ability for you to pick which team you want to be. Well, first they announce the theme of the teams, and then you can pick which team you'd like to be on. And then during the actual competition, if you decide to start in the middle, I think you're randomly placed in a team. But you don't even have to pick a team in general. You could just be a spectator. That's what not being on a team is called. So you can always just make an account, maybe upload some characters, maybe think about it, or just kind of watch the fun happen and literally be a spectator. So that was all the tips I could come up with, but I sort of intended this video as something that someone could watch like in tandem with their drawing, or just kind of listen to in the background. So I'll try to come up with a few more things to talk about here. Bear with me. So it's good to also keep in mind the size requirements of your pieces. So each individual attack can only be up to 5 megabytes, and nothing beyond that. Your avatar can only be strictly 100 pixels by 100 pixels, and the thumbnail for each character or attack also, I think, is limited to specifically 200 by 200 pixels. So that's just something to keep in mind. What I do after I finish each attack is first I size it down if it needs to be sized down according to, how I export it. If the file is too big, then I'll sort of size it down accordingly. But another thing I'll do is I'll duplicate the whole drawing and then size that duplicated drawing into like the square of what I want the thumbnail to be. So I just kind of make it a square where I want it to be the thumbnail, and then I size that new square to be 200 by 200. I hope that makes sense. Also keep in mind the maturity level of each piece you do, and make sure to properly tag it according to the proper filters so that certain people who don't want to see a certain mature subject can have it properly filtered out. I think this is another thing that they take pretty seriously, that if it's not done properly, then that action can be taken on your account. So another good thing to keep in mind. On that note, it's always a good idea to double check the permissions of that specific character that you're drawing, or the general permissions that each creator sets for themselves, like as like a blanket permissions. Like some people don't want to see certain subjects, or they don't want their characters portrayed in a certain way, and you always want to respect that. So it's always good to double check both the general permissions that each creator has set, as well as the character specific ones. And within character specific permissions, that can also be not always like do's and don'ts, but it can also be things like, oh hey, keep in mind this certain trait of this character, or don't forget this, or yeah, that makes me think of my own characters actually. The 4 seasons from Supernova, they all have a symbol on each of their face, like autumn has a star, spring has a heart, and so on. So if I had certain specific permissions for each of those characters, I would write like, oh hey, don't forget that they have a symbol on their face. But even if you do forget that, like, and you draw them, it's totally fine. To be totally honest, sometimes I do too, so no shame there, it's fine. But that's just an example I can think of. Another thing that's important to remember is to list as many of your social medias as possible so that people know how to properly credit you. Oftentimes people will take attacks and like re-upload them on other sites, and they'll credit you, of course. I mean, granted that you've properly listed your social medias, but also like they'll just credit your art fight too if you don't have any other social medias that you're on. And if you don't want people doing this, you should spell that out specifically, like in your bio or like in your general permissions. But yeah, keep in mind that that's a thing that people like to do. Like for example, I like to take attacks that people do of my characters and upload them on Toy House. But yeah, if you don't want people doing that, or if you don't want me doing that, you should make that clear from the get-go, because it's very common. For the sake of sparking some ideas for some attacks that you could do as simple as like just a single character on their own. You could do a few characters together by the same person, or you could do like characters, like different characters from different people altogether. You could even do like your own OCs and their OCs, but you should also double check the permissions for that too, because some people don't want their characters interacting with like other people's characters, or they don't, even within their own characters that they've made, like they have certain specific universes and they don't want them to like cross over. So before you do that, you should, you know, just as a general whole, you should always check the permissions before doing an attack. So you could also do a mass attack. That could be as simple as like just a bunch of chibis on one page, or you could get really creative with it and do like a group shot in like a scene, like for example like a summer scene or like a story specific scene if it's a bunch of characters from the same story. You could also do an attack themed around this year's theme. So this year again is vampires and werewolves, so you could do something on that theme. You could also spice up your attack by just making it like a simple GIF, like with like some sparkles, or like make the character blank, or like even attempt like simple animation. That can always be fun and be a nice surprise for the receiver. But anyway, yeah, I think that covers pretty much all the main talking points I wanted to cover today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope even at least a few of my tips were helpful, and I hope everyone has a happy art fight. Bye bye!